you got to teach it. You got to pass it on. You got to make sure that whenever somebody else comes up like me, who's 23 years old, moving to town back then, learning 30 Irish songs for a gig, he's like, listen, if you come across somebody that you think, if they show the same passion towards it that you did, you got to teach them what I've taught you, because that's the only way it perpetuates itself.
Right. Hey guys, my name is Jeff McMahon, and I play the piano for people. I've played on some big records, played on some big stages, and I've played with some big stars. Big or small, they're all the same. Taking someone with a dream, playing their song, and trying to get them further up the ladder. So that's what we'll do here. Have a conversation, maybe shine a light, and play some music. And I'll be on piano. This is McMahon on keys. Turk McNamara, we are back in Turk's Lounge where the music happens.
Here we are. We're back.
I know that, I spoke to you on another platform some months ago, and we've shared rounds up here since then. We've had a lot of music in here. A lot of people don't know what Turk's Lounge is, but for those of us here in Nashville, it's your version of what might be the Bluebird Cafe, right?
Yeah, Turk's Lounge is. When I moved to Nashville in 1995, there were a lot of small rooms in town. You had Douglas Corner, and you had Windows on the Cumberland, and you had the Sutler, and a lot of those small rooms are leaving or have left us. They're not here anymore. I didn't want to go to New York City. I grew up in the Northeast. I had no desire really to go west. I was born in Louisiana, and so I was like, man, I'm going to split the difference and head to Nashville. I didn't really know anything about it. You know what I mean? I moved here. I drove down. I came around 440, had a buddy of mine who was at Vanderbilt Med School, so I went and crashed on his couch. But I remember looking at 440 in the downtown area, and it was the LNC Tower and it was the Batman Building. And that was it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I remember going downtown, and I got my first job waiting tables at a place called Mulligan's on 2nd Avenue.
Sure.
And I spent, like 6 months waiting tables, and then I got behind the bar, and then I got up on stage. And the owner heard me sing. He's like, man, you got a good voice. You learn 30 Irish songs, I'll put you on stage. And I was like, okay. And I took him at his word. And I went back to him like 2 weeks later. I was like, man, I learned 30 Irish songs. And he looked at me like I was nuts. And he handed me a guitar. He said, start singing. And so I did. I sang like 10 or 12 songs. He goes, man, you start Wednesday. And that was my first gig in town. It was 8 to 1. It was a 5-hour solo for $40 down on 2nd Avenue. And I did that for a year. And then I got bumped up to the house band, playing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. And then Finley's out at Opry Lane Hotel opened, and I got hired to be the house band out there. And Dan McGinnis on Music Row opened up. And so what started as an opportunity to get on stage turned into a career.
Right.
And then I think for a long time that actually worked against me in the songwriting in Nashville, because I kind of got known as the Irish guy, and
sure,
it was frustrating. And then I think what has actually happened now is, because I've done it for so long, I've got chops, man. I've been playing a long time. Do you know what I mean? I got a lot of time on stage. And
yeah.
So what was a liability at one stage, now people are like, man, wow. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of come full circle, and it's become an asset to me. And when we opened the pub in 2010, I went from playing 6 and 7 nights a week to only playing 3 nights a week, because I still play Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. And I've been playing with the same guys for 17 years, which is pretty cool. And,
sure.
But, and it was always writing songs during that time, and I was always kind of tucked away. But I don't know, COVID was good for me. I woke up, you know what I mean? So I figured some things out. And when I came out of the COVID pandemic shutdown for the restaurant, we navigated it. We did, I make the analogy a lot. We've talked about it. It's like playing chess. You know what I mean? You just got to strategize, and you got to think ahead of it. And I thought to myself, if I can navigate a restaurant being shut down through COVID and coming back on the other side, I can take all those same principles that I've learned by running this place for 13 years and apply it to the music business as a songwriter.
Right.
And inevitably re-engage with the scene. I mean, a lot of things have changed. Social media being the biggest thing has changed drastically since I started. I remember when I was working with a publisher in 2007, she got the iPhone 1.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh my God, look at this thing. You could see the internet on your phone, And
Sure.
now it's like, so much of what is done in the industry is all done via phones and social media and stuff like that. And I'm getting there, but to me, the songs are always the most important thing. And then the network. Who do you know? How can you help? How can you pass it on? What can you do that's going to help others? Because if you help others, inevitably it's going to come back to you. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of also the motivation for the pub for up here for Turk's Lounge.
Right. Well, I think I realize that social media has impacted things, but I also think that what you gain from the Irish music and what you gain from your songwriting and what you gain from the clientele that you have built in the restaurant is also what's missing in the music business, which is authenticity.
Yeah.
The social media part is a tool within that, but I think that what a lot of people that I've talked to that know your music or that you host up here as a writer, they recognize that your music is authentic in the same way that the patrons downstairs recognize you as authentic and they support the place.
Well, I think that's because I try to write from a really honest place. You know
Right.
what I mean? And I think it's because I perform from a very honest place. I tell, I was given a gift of a mentorship by a fellow who owned Mulligan's. His name was Tony Lyons. He was a great guy. His father he was a cool story. He was a booking agent in the Catskills in the 1960s. In the 1960s, a lot of those people that were booking those acts, like, this would be like the Dirty Dancing era.
Right.
All those guys were all vaudeville musicians because rock and roll put them all out of business. They were looking for gigs and they were looking for money. So they ended up going up to the Catskills and they were doing this. Tony was a kid. He soaked all that stuff up. And so he learned the craft of performing from that tradition, which is probably the greatest performing tradition in the history of American entertainment.
Right. Well, and when you say the Dirty Dancing era, you're talking about how the movie was set in that environment where they were doing that kind of entertainment.
Yeah, 1960s, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you go up to that area and the big bands were so prevalent in those big resorts, you know what I
Right.
mean? And so
Right.
Tony kind of soaked up that, and then he goes to Vietnam and he gets tapped in with Adrian Cronauer and the whole Good Morning Vietnam crew, and
Right.
he learns that side of things. And then he moves to Nashville with Dan Miller and Pat Sajak. Those were his two best buddies. The three of them opened the first Mulligan's back in the day.
Right.
Tony ends up being an announcer on Grand Ole Opry. He works for CMT. He's got an unbelievable mic voice, but he understood stagecraft. You know what I mean? There's a lot of psychology and technique you can use in your performance that if you learn it and you apply it, it's going to work every time. And so, but he always said to me, he only put one stipulation on it. He said, the stipulation on it is you got to teach it. You got to pass it on. You got to make sure that whenever somebody else comes up like me, who's 23 years old, moving to town back then,
Right.
learning 30 Irish songs for a gig, he's like, listen, if you come across somebody that you think, if they show the same passion towards it that you did, you got to teach them what I've taught you, because that's the only way it perpetuates itself.
Right.
And so I always have that in the back of my mind. That was in the back of my mind when I opened up here too, because not only is this pub, or the lounge rather, Turk's Lounge up here, an opportunity or a vehicle for people to, exploit their songs and put it out there and get people to come and listen to them play, it's also a training vehicle. You know what I mean? I can get up there and go, hey, let me show you how I'm going to sound your guitar out. Something very similar, but something that I think it's like learning how to balance your checkbook. It's the things that I take for granted that I've learned in 20-something years of playing. I think it's important that people who are moving here just now or really getting started, you want to be as empowered as possible. And the only way you're going to be empowered to really succeed in this game is to learn as much as you can about everything.
Right.
And so Tony taught me stagecraft. And here's the flip side of that apprenticeship that I had down there that day was the other guy was a live sound engineer. His name was Jake Mayer.
Right.
Great friend of mine. I mean, these were two of my dearest friends. I mean, we spent 10 years playing together, and they've both passed. But Jake taught me frequency. Jake taught me high pass filter, low pass filters. He taught me where does the consonants and the assonance of your frequency, how to build a curve, all these things that I soaked it all in, but now I'm in a position, the boards are very different. The technology is very different. It's much more digital than it was back then. It was all analog back then. But the same principles apply because the physics of sound haven't changed.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons that we started doing this podcast. I started entertaining the idea of doing this because I saw so many young artists that I might be helping with a live stream or helping them do a show. Maybe I'm even playing keyboards for some of those guys or girls. That when they're interviewed, when they're talking to people that don't necessarily know the performing side or the audio side. They know the promotional side.
Right.
They know how to market things. So one of the things that I'm looking to maybe do through this is, if I've learned anything through the 30 years that I've been bouncing around out there playing records and stuff, that maybe I can show them where a pothole is that they might not identify.
Right.
Most of them have sound guys. Give us an example of stagecraft, of something that that you were taught that we know they should learn, but if they say, well, like what? Like what should I learn?
I got one.
Okay, give us.
It's the audience is inevitably one big giant mob of people. It's one big collective, okay? And so if you're sitting there and you get one guy in that audience who decides they want to engage, heckle you, shout at you, give off to you, whatever it is, if you go after that person and you engage with that person, the audience will side with that person, okay? Because he's one of them. The stagecraft is, all you have to do is, what's your name?
Right.
And the guy's going to go, my name's Bob. And go, Bob, everybody, this is Bob. Well, what I just did was I put Bob on an island by himself. He is no longer part of the audience. He's now Bob, everybody, Bob. So then what you choose to do and what you try to do is, listen, he wants to be part of the show, make him part of the show. But if he becomes part of a show in a negative way, you can basically do whatever you want to do as far as your rapport with the guy because he's no longer part of the audience.
Right.
He's on his own. And the other thing that happens when you do that is they lose their confidence because they sense it too. They sense that they don't have the backing of everybody behind them anymore.
Right.
It's a real subtle thing. I use it. That's a technique I have used a lot over the years. Hey man, what's your name? Bob. Everybody, there's Bob. Bob, there's everybody. And inevitably, then Bob's my buddy.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And you took a situation that could have escalated in a negative way, and you made it work to your advantage. I mean, the reality is, in a show, I've got the microphone all the time.
Right.
The microphone trumps the audience all the time, as long as the audience is with you and not with them, with the other guy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that was a little stagecraft I learned. Tony always taught me front table set the tone. Whoever's right in front of the stage sets the tone for the room. And that's true, So
well,
you want to engage those people up close. You want to get them part who you are, you know what I mean? And get it in there.
Well, I think the example that you give is, clearly it can be that guy that's drunk that's trying to make himself the center of attention. Another side of that, and tell me if you agree or disagree, because you've been behind the mic as the front man much more than I ever have. I was a wingman.
Right.
I'm a good one, but I'm a wingman. What I've also found is that, you can be viewed as punching down because you have that microphone.
Yeah.
Taking advantage of that. But you can also, when you engage somebody that's not trying to be the center of attention, but you engage them in a friendly way.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Then you teach the audience that you are engaging. And they can say, oh, he's friends with Bob. That means he really does care about us. He doesn't have to engage each of us individually.
Right.
The example that I use in that case, musically, but it happens in the real world. You don't have to walk every little old lady across the street. If people see you one time walk one little old lady across the street, you're the kind of guy that walks little old ladies across the street.
Yeah.
And if you're the guy that's kind to Bob, you can teach the entire crowd that you're engaging just because you engaged one of them.
Yeah, and I think the other side to that too, though, is you come at it from a humble point of view. It sounds right. The fine line. What you need to do is the audience wants to be led. They want you to take them on the journey. They're there for the show. As the front man, it's my job to give them a show, and it's my job to take them on the show. I tell them all the time, listen, I'll play every song you ask for, but I get to choose the order. Because sometimes a set list calls for a ballad and the room calls for a rockin' song or vice versa. And so that's stagecraft. Knowing, a lot of people, I don't work off of a set list. I threw my set list away in 96. I mean, I know 300 songs in the Irish tradition. And so I've got a song for every opportunity, every moment. But I'm always thinking ahead one or two songs. You know what I mean? And so, but if you come at it from humble, if you lead them in a way, hey, you got to be authentic. You got to be who you are. Right. And I find the most successful people behind the microphone are the ones, they're the same way behind the mic as they are off the mic. You know what I mean? That's just who they are. They let their guard down to the audience. They show who they are to the audience because the audience can tell. Do you know what I mean? And so if you are genuine with them and genuine with your love for the music and you're genuine with the love for entertaining them, and because you're there to give them the music, you're there to give them the opportunity to appreciate it, they will. And then the best part is when they walk up to you after, go, oh my God, that was so much fun. Thank you so much. I can't believe how much fun I had. You guys are great. And then you're like, well, thank you. Never. I've been very blessed. I've been able to do this a long time, and I'm pretty good at what I do. Every time somebody walks up to me after a show and says how much fun they had or how much they enjoyed it, that's a blessing. Right. I never get tired of that, ever. We run into folks that know me, like I see a lot of folks around town that know me better than I know them just from seeing the show. But inevitably, they'll go, hey, what's going on? And you go, hey, what's going on? You're their friend. They feel like they're your friend because you are one of them, even though you have the microphone between you and them. It's a fine line to walk, but if you can find it, and it comes from, you just got to be you, man. You got to just be who you are. You can't be anybody.
Can't fake it.
No, you can't fake it. You can't. And the same thing with songwriting. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's the best songwriters are the ones who are writing from their toes. Do you know what I mean? It's Will Nance said to me one time. He goes, "You can't write every song for the radio. Sometimes you just got to write the song."
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And a great songwriter, even if they know the song doesn't have any commercial potential, but they know it's a really good song, they're going to finish the song.
Sure.
Because the song's worth it.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? And so I think performing, and I think entertaining, and I think songwriting, and I think running an establishment like this, they all come from the same origin. And that origin is humility. Stay true to who you are. Understand that this is an opportunity for us to give to others.
Yeah.
And if you give it to them first, man, they give it back to you in tenfold. It's unbelievable, So it's pretty cool. It's a cool place to be in. I love it. I'm really blessed, man. I'm not lying to you. It's pretty cool.
Hey, Troy Castellano here from Instruments for Education. We're at one of our first stops here today on a Friday. We're delivering some tambourines and some shakers for an elementary school classroom. We're at Liberty Elementary School. Hey guys, I'm Troy Castellano. We started Instruments for Education as a way to put instruments into the hands of kids. Sometimes we donate directly to students, sometimes to teachers, and sometimes to full classrooms in their schools. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and we service the Middle Tennessee area. Since we started, we've reached over 100 schools and donated over 500 instruments. If you'd like to make a request for an instrument, or you have an instrument to donate, or would like to contribute financially, visit our website at instrumentsforeducation.org. Thanks for supporting us, and thanks for helping keep music alive.
that's one of the reasons that I'm so excited about you pushing more of your music out there, because all of that stagecraft, all of that experience you have, it makes a lot of sense to some of these artists like Zach Stone, who's been here, Matty True, who's done rounds here. Even though you're not necessarily trying to be that artist, I like the fact that you're starting to share. I know you're, at a comfortable level, we're doing some things, we're pushing some songs out, but it lets people know that, well, who is Turk? What is his music? What is his thing? If he's authentic, what is that authenticity? Now they can see, oh, I can pull it up on Spotify. That's what it is. Yeah. You don't have to be opening for Garth Brooks. You can just, they can see a performance video like some of the videos we've performed here, like what we got to do together.
Which was cool.
It lets them understand, okay, I have to be authentic. He says I have to be authentic. What does that sound like for him?
Right.
And that's what's so great about you pushing some of that music out, which is, I'm just glad we're doing it.
Man, I am too. It was fun doing Cold November Rain with you on the keys. I'd never done it like that. You know what I mean? And so that's a cool thing for me to hear a song that I've only heard one way since I wrote it, which is an acoustic guitar and that application to it. And then you put keys behind it and you kind of, it takes it in a completely different direction, and I think evolving and evolution musically and having the opportunity to make music with other really, really talented musicians. I mean, you always want to play with players that are better than you are. It's going to make you better. Do you know what I mean? And so, I don't know. It's pretty cool. I'm not in I'm in a place now where I'm coming at it, I think, from a much healthier perspective. Do you know what I mean? I'm not. I can't really. I don't want to say it's not do or die, because I have tremendous drive right now to achieve what I've set back out to do, which is to re-engage as a staff songwriter, to get songs on the radio, to get songs recorded by artists. But access is a big part of that. Which is another reason why we opened up Turk's Lounge. I mean, if I can help other people get an opportunity to perform and build a group of followers and get people to kind of see them play in a room like this, especially when they're so close to the artist.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's the beauty of this room is, A, the sound's great, but B, you're right on. I mean, you're right there. Do you know what I mean? And there's an intimacy there that is you can't replicate in rooms that don't have intimacy. It sounds really basic, but that's just the truth, Well,
intimacy and an environment that cares.
Yeah.
You have, there are a few rooms like that in Nashville.
Yep.
There's a lot of rooms where you can go in and perform and people are talking and eating and laughing and they're not paying attention to the songs. And that's one of the things that's really attractive about performing in here. And doing the rounds, hearing where everybody's coming from, that also providing that to those writers, that inspires those writers to want to do it more.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot that they don't know if people care about. And that's what you're building.
But that's on the writer too, though. Do you know what I mean? Because in my opinion, okay, if I'm going to play a show and people aren't paying attention, that's on me, not on them. Because my goal is to entertain them. My goal is to draw their attention. They have to pay attention to me. If you play like background music, you'll be background music. And part of that is confidence. And you can do it through conversation. You do it by finding somebody. Find the person that's listening to you. If you look the room and you look at the room, you're going to see the people who are paying attention versus the ones who aren't. Those are the ones you focus on. You focus on those folks, and inevitably it kind of builds from there. But if you're good at what you do, and if you can perform your songs and you can sell your songs, they're going to listen. They're going to pay attention. They should. And if they're not, you need to work a little harder. Do you know what I mean? And I definitely listen. This room is set up for success in the fact that we definitely try to make people pay attention. However, if you're going to be a performer and you're going to be an entertainer as well as an artist, I mean, to be an artist means it's not having the view. The views are one thing. Can you get every person in that room to pay attention to you by the time the show's done? That to me is an artist. That to me is the person who's going to be successful because they've taken people who may have never heard them play before and you've engaged them. You've got them to pay attention to you. You've got them to listen to you. You've got them to want to hear more of what you have to say. And that is the job. That is what you need to do. If you're going to be the guy who's in front, if you're going to be the person who is the artist, the star on the stage, it's your responsibility to have every single eye in that room paying attention to you by the time you're done playing, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Right. Okay. So agreed.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that I have talked about a lot is practice. People that need to practice. People that maybe they wrote their own songs and they don't even know how to play them well.
Right.
Which is fine unless you've been doing that song in writers' rounds for 8 months and you still haven't learned how to do it. So, when you talk about, you talk about stage time, you talk about how much you can perform. How do you, just as an example, can you give an example of something you do, a way that you practice, something that you identify and say, I need to be better at that. I need to be better at holding the crowd. Okay, agreed. What's a way to do that?
Visualization is a really big thing that I use. I do this a lot, and I don't do it as often as I used to when I was first cutting my teeth, but like the odd time that my wife Paula goes to bed early and the kids are asleep and I decide that I'm not going to go to bed, the guitar's in my hands, right? TV's off. I'm standing in my living room. I'm talking the talk. I'm playing to the room in my mind. I'm living the show. Right. Especially if it's new songs, right? If it's new songs, part of delivering a song is delivering the introduction to the song. Do you know what I mean? Make them pay attention because of the way you're going to talk to them. And that goes back to being genuine and honest with them. But repetition, time on stage, there's no substitution for time on stage. If you've been playing the same song for 7 or 8 months and you're not getting any better, you're not working.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to work, man. It takes work. I mean, everything in life is you get out of it what you put into it.
Sure.
I'm lucky, man. I was able to build my chops and perform at the same time. The best playing music is kind of like, the analogy is I worked at a golf course for a while. I love playing golf, right? And so every once in a while you sneak out and go play golf and you're playing with the guys who are like 65 or 70, and they hit it down the middle, just a bit short, they chip up, they putt in for par.
Right.
They're consistent, but they've learned all the facets of the game, and therefore they're good, as opposed to I hit a ball a ton, and then I miss my shot, and then I flub my wedge, and then I two-putt, and the next thing you know, I'm walking away with a 6.
Right.
I can hit the ball a mile, but I don't score because I hadn't taken the time to learn the things that are weak. You have to be self-aware enough to understand what you need to work on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? If it's your guitar playing, start practicing. Get a metronome. I hate it. It drives people nuts. Metronomes are the most frustrating thing on the absolute planet. It doesn't matter. It's what you need to do to get better. Do you know what I mean?
One of the things you were talking about with visualization, I did a show with a young lady recently. We had an opening slot, and she commented after that show, "Oh my gosh, that was the smoothest show I remember doing. I felt like I knew everything that I was supposed to do." And I had to remind her, we practiced this exact show 4 times end to end as a show. And I think this is what you're talking about, including not, and then I'll say something here, blah, 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 and then I'll do the song. No, we practiced the rap.
Right.
You practiced the story you were going to tell. We moved the microphone from the front of the stage back behind you because you're going to carry the mic on that song. You walk through all of that because that also becomes muscle memory. In sports, you play the way you practice. It's no different than in music. So,
but here's the thing. I think that absolutely works, especially if you're playing a different room every show, right? If you're playing different places, you can do the same show. I play the same room every show.
Yeah.
So I live by the mantra. You may hear the same songs. You're never going to see the same show. Do you know what I mean? But I know I've had people that come in that have been out on tour, and they come in and they play a show. They'll play a Wednesday nights, and every show is the exact same show, same order, same cadence, and what ends up happening is people come and see him play the first time, and then come see him play the second time, and then they come and see him the third time. By the time they come and see him the third time, if it's the same show, they're probably not coming back for a fourth time. You know what I mean? So I think you have to find the balance of Yes, repetition is the key to success. It also depends on what situation you're in. In that situation, that's exactly right. She visualized it without even realizing she was visualizing it because she did it through repetition. Do you know what I mean? And when she was on stage, I mean, sports is the same way. I mean, why do you run a play 400 times on a play to make sure you do it right? You know what I mean? However, it can't look rehearsed. You know what I mean? I think that's what you really, that is the epitome of the best artist, right? If somebody really spends time and has that stage and they know where they're going to walk, they know where their cues are, they know where they're going to work with the microphone, they know what they're going to say, they have all this stuff. But does it sound like it's the first time they're actually saying it, or does it sound like it's the 5th time they're saying it, or the 10th time? You know what I mean? And so that, I think, it keeps going. You asked me what I'm working on. I've put in live stream cameras downstairs and upstairs, and I've started recording the shows. And I watched. I was like, I'm not smiling enough. If I'm not smiling on stage, I'm not having fun. If I'm having fun, but I'm not smiling enough. And so I've all right, I make a conscious effort to smile more. And well, guess what? The show's gotten better.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or I'll listen to it I'm talking too fast. I need to slow down. The cadence of my introductions are too fast.
Yeah.
And I'm breezing through stuff that if people are struggling to hear, or if it's, a situation, they're not going to catch what I'm saying. But if I intentionally slow down what I'm saying and it sounds slower to my ear, it actually sounds normal to theirs. And so the day I stopped trying to get better as an entertainer or a performer is the day I quit.
Well, you've got the stagecraft down clearly because you fill your place every weekend.
Yep.
I don't want to get lost in how we can help everybody else without talking about your music.
Yep.
What Happens in Between was the first single that you released. We've recently shot a piece of video for that we're going to be putting out.
Yep.
That was your first thing on Spotify.
Yeah, I wrote that with an Irish artist named Tony Kerr, who's a great songwriter in town. And that kind of came out of the whole concept of, I tell my children, in life, you're going to have 12 unbelievable days. The day you meet your wife, the day you have your first child, your second child, the day you win the state championship, the first kiss, all that stuff. You're going to have 7 or 8 really, really, really bad days.
Right.
You come home from school and your grandmother passed away. Your dog got hit by the truck. These things that are crushing, right? Life is what happens in between all those big days. Those big moments define you. They are. They're defining moments in our lives. But it's everything else that happens that counts. You know what I mean? And so that's where that song comes from, what happens in between, and don't be afraid to appreciate what you're doing. Don't get too caught up in where you're going. Just be aware of the fact that what you're doing is where you're going. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that's kind of where that song came from, and that goes back to the authenticity. That's me. That's who I am. I make it's a hard balance, but I am keeping priority in place is important to being successful and happy. I think people who get sidetracked by putting things in front of what's really important, for me, it's family first.
Yeah.
Family first, God second, everything else third. You know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. But to me, God and family are almost the same thing. And so, I don't know. I think it's trying to make sure you write what you know. You know what I mean? That's what they say, and so, I came at songwriting from a different perspective, but I've been studying it for a long time. And that goes back to performing too. Listen, if your songs aren't getting better, the more you write, you need to work harder again. You know what I mean? Everything is, no one is perfect. No one's great. Everybody could be better. You know? What about you, man? What draws you to working with an artist?
I wind up working with people for almost contradictory reasons.
Right.
I love to work with people that have nothing going on but a dream.
Right.
Because on the one hand, I guess it can kind of be lazy because it's easy to move the needle. It's easy to get them encouraged because they see things happen. It's easier to see things happen when you start with very little.
Right.
But the downside to that is you don't have a good sense of who's going to invest in themselves. And that can be discouraging when you are working with people that, like you were saying, they know that it could take 10 years to get where they want to be, but they don't think that means work for 10 years. They think that means wait for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that, finding those people that, are ready to move is always encouraging. I've got a young lady that I've been helping her kind of get some things going, and she has turned things around in a day that someone else that started out ahead of her hasn't turned around in ever, sometimes. So finding somebody that is really excited and motivated, I love helping them. Finding the people that work on their own behalf and do like what you're saying, try to get better, try to move the needle. That is also encouraging for me because it lets me know that my investment in them is validated.
Yeah.
So I just I didn't gather up what skills I did to hang on to them. I don't think that's helpful to anybody if I just hang on to it. So
well, but think about it, because for lack of a better term, you've ridden the bus. You've achieved things that a lot of these people that are starting out are trying to do. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but it's piano that makes you breathe. Do you know what I mean? From what I know about you and how you've been, playing the keyboards and playing the piano. And so you've taken that where everybody would want to be, like with all the dance hall doctor stuff and everything you did before. But there's a lot of people that would do anything to be where you were at that situation and to do that. But I think what it's kind of cool is the fact that you play for the people. You're playing for me on Cold November Rain for that, for our video, the same way you were playing for McGraw when you were playing for him. You know what I mean? And so I think,
totally.
I think that's kind of a cool point to come from too. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I like the fact that giving first is a lot more rewarding on the back end. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of the reason why, watching what you're doing with some of these folks and bringing them in. And, I like the fact that we're kind of putting some stuff together, seeing where it takes it,
Well, that's why we're calling it McMahon on Keys, because at the end of the day, I worked really hard to make sure that I hung on to that.
Yeah.
To make sure that I remembered, there are songs that I played on that stage for full arenas. I played that same song before those arenas were full.
Yeah.
They're not full because I suddenly got 1,000 times better.
Right.
They're full for other reasons, but what fed me was trying to make that song better. And I get to do that with you. I get to do that with Matty True. I get to do that with Zach Stone. And that's why I started doing it to begin with.
But it's funny though, because when I first met you, I didn't hear you play the piano probably for the first 4 or 5 months that I knew you.
Yeah.
Right. And then we were over at the parlor studio one day, and you sat down to the grand piano and you started playing. I was like, damn. Do you know what I mean? And so you have morphed into you do all these other things, but the piano it's just, I don't know. It was kind of cool, man. Musicians have a tendency of opening up their soul without them really realizing they're doing it, especially when they're playing music, especially when they don't realize people aren't paying attention. But it was cool for me because that moment was when I was like, I hear it. I'm serious. I'm serious. It's a big deal. Do you know what I mean? What's cool? Listen, we've been in town a long time. You can tell guys who know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Well, let's listen to it. Let's share.
Yeah.
Cold November Rain by Turk McNamara, written by Turk McNamara, sung by Turk McNamara,
accompanied by Jeff McMahon. There
in
you go.
Turk's Lounge.
In Turk's Lounge. Any more Turks we can get in there would be great.
Let's watch it.
Cool, man.
Autumn leaves are barely on the trees, when a whisper of wind blankets the ground, and the rust beneath my footsteps. Oh, is the only sound. I smile the sky up above me. When I feel her wet caress, the pain of her cold numbs my soul. It washes the ache from my chest. And I'm traveling on, and I'm traveling on, and I have broken the last chain, and I'm finally healed. Oh, I'm healed by the cold November rain. Well, all my mistakes are clear to me. I've come to realize my fate, for the rain has made me see that it's never too late to keep traveling on. Keep traveling on, and I have broken the last chain, and I'm finally healed. Oh, I'm healed by the cold November rain, and I'm traveling on, and I'm traveling on.
Traveling on.
And I have broken the last chain, and I'm finally healed. Oh, I'm healed by the cold November rain, by the cold November rain, by the cold November rain.
So you're okay with piano vocal?
Yeah, man, it was cool. It was fun. It was cool. I liked it. I mean, I was like I said, I mean, it was a treatment of the song that I'd never heard before. You know what I mean? And as the guy who wrote it, that's cool. That means it's evolving. That means it's getting. But yeah, it was cool.
Well, it's a great song, and that's something that you can do with great songs that you can't do with songs that just aren't the same unless you have the loop or the tracks or the backup things. You know, it's just a good song. And I'm just glad that we were able to pull it off with just a piano, especially when you have so many guitars that you don't know how many guitars you have.
I have a few.
I know you do. I know you do. Well, tell everybody if they want to hear you, obviously that's going to be here more often than anywhere. So how do people find you? Where do they look?
Yeah, so my website is turkmcnamara.com, and so that'll lead you to Turk's Lounge up here. Okay. But and then on Instagram, I'm at Turk McNamara, and on Facebook, it would be Turk McNamara. You can also find a lot of the information about me through the vehicle of McNamara's Irish Pub and Restaurant. So that's the website, was McNamara's You can find on Instagram, it's McNamara's_Irish Nash. And then on Facebook, it would just be McNamara's You can find my songs on Spotify. I believe they're on iTunes. But I'm here almost every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights downstairs with my guys. And then I book 2 or 3 times a year. I book a songwriter show up here.
A lot of music coming out.
A lot of music. Come on, man. Let's do it. That's what it's all about.
Well, thanks, man.
Hey, pal.
I'm gonna
get
to come make some music here too.
Come on, man. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, let's book it. It'd be great.
Thanks,
awesome,
man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And that is Turk McNamara and Turk's Lounge. Turk's a good friend and a good friend to the podcast. A lot of the musicians in the area. So you will not only see and hear more from him, but you will see a lot of Turk's Lounge if you continue following McMahon on Keys. We shoot a lot there. We play a lot there. So thank you, Turk, for loaning the space and for supporting us. Randy Allen, thank you again for a stellar job shooting the video for Cold November Rain. Tommy Leland for recording and mixing that for us. You did a great job. Thank you, sir. And for everybody that's following McMahon on Keys, thanks so much. We got a lot of good feedback on our first episode, so we appreciate you guys. If you've got thoughts on what you've heard or what you would like to hear, let us know. Jeff at McMahonOnKeys.com. And we will see you next time with McMahon on Keys.